shocking news and what happened this week. A Kenyan court has blocked the deployment of 1,000 Kenyan police officers to Haiti to lead a UN-backed mission to fight gang violence. The UN Security Council authorized the mission for 1 year with a possible extension. The US pledged $200 million to fund it, but will it happen? The Kenyan court blocked it following a petition by a former presidential candidate who argues that the president has no power to send troops abroad without parliament's approval. He also criticized President Ruto for agreeing to lead such a mission while the country is dealing with its own security problems such as militant attacks and ethnic clashes. The court will decide on November 9, 2023. I'm following this closely like a fly follows a person eating a juicy mango by the roadside on a sunny day. M23, one of the 120 rebel groups that have been fighting the government in Eastern DRC since 2021, launched a new offensive on October 26, 2023. They shelled and captured the town of Bambo, forcing the government forces to flee. Thousands of terrified civilians also had to leave for their safety, not knowing where they were going or what life would be like tomorrow. Many of them were separated from their families, belongings, and everything they have ever known. Now, it is estimated that the violence has displaced almost 200,000 people since October 1st and has worsened the humanitarian situation in the region. Now, this is not the first time that M23 has occupied the town of Bambo. In 2021, they took over the town and allegedly claiming the civilian lives in a nearby village. They withdrew in December 2022 and handed it over to the commanding officers of the East African Community Regional Forces as a goodwill gesture, according to their leaders. But they resurfaced in 2021, accusing Kinshasa of failing to meet its commitment to demobilize its fighters. M23 was defeated in 2013 and signed an agreement with the authorities, but the deal was never fully implemented. This situation raises many concerns, but one that stands out is how come the local army is unable to effectively deal with M23 and protect its territory and its people? Like, what is lacking? I'm not interested in the blame game of who's funding who, because I think that infantilizes and takes away accountability from the leadership. Yes, there is an aggression, but what is the government doing about it? Let's remember, people, the Congolese government does not just have the right to protect its people by any means necessary. It is also a responsibility. We know we can't rely on MONUSCO, who are busy writing reports and not delivering on its mandate. They've had 14,000 well-armed troops on the ground since 1999, but instability in the region keeps on going from bad to worse. I think the main focus should be, what does the Congolese government need to protect itself? DRC must pull this off on its own and stand as the giant we all know it has the potential to become. I remember in 2000, DRC was under a UN arms embargo, but after checking, I found a quote by Jean-Michel Dumont, MONUSCO political affairs officers, saying that, I quote, "There is no embargo on the arms DRC would like to purchase. DRC can buy all the weapons it wants as long as the weapons are intended for the regular forces," end quote. Now, if there is no arms embargo, then what is the problem? You see, the sad reality is that there are way too many players in this crisis who are benefiting from the instability and disorganization of the Great Lake regions, and those who are benefiting the most are not even Africans. Like I said before, if someone sits you down and explain to you the situation in Eastern DRC and you understand it, it means they didn't explain it properly. In the world of sports, the line between fair play and grand larceny is thinner than a supermodel's waistline. Yesterday, we witnessed the third biggest robbery in sport history after the infamous Chelsea-Barcelona and Samuel Eto'o not winning the FIFA Ballon d'Or. Like, how the hell Tyson Fury won against Francis Ngannou? How? But I guess it makes sense from a business perspective. Fury sells more tickets than a lottery jackpot, so they gave him the point for the W. On June 10, 2023, the Tanzanian parliament approved a deal with a Dubai-based company to manage 4 berths of the Dar es Salaam port, the country's largest port. The deal did not go smoothly as it sparked protests from the people who felt that their leaders were giving away the country's strategic assets to a foreign firm, like many of Tanzanian neighbors have already done. The people also demanded more transparency and accountability from their leaders. Now, according to Amnesty International, the protests led to 22 people being arrested for protesting against this deal. The human rights group urged Tanzania to respect the people's rights to protest and their freedom of expression. But, as they say in French, le chien aboie, la caravane passe, or in other words, the dog barks, but the caravan moves on. So eventually, on October 22nd, 2023, the government of Tanzania and the Dubai-based company DP World signed the deal in the presence of President Samia Suluhu Hassan. This move is part of President Hassan's commitment to open up Tanzania and improve its relation with the rest of the world. And many reforms that has already taken place since she took power in 2021 following the unfortunate death of President John Pombe Magufuli. President Hassan is hoping that the deal will improve the trade and efficiency with neighboring countries and reduce cargo handling time. Her government promised that the deal would not affect the sovereignty of the port and that DP World would only run part of the port and that the country would review the Dubai-based company performance every 5 years. The people of Tanzania have every right to be concerned, especially when considering what's been happening around the continent. The US Embassy in South Africa strikes again. Not too long ago, the US ambassador in South Africa accused the country of sending weapons to Russia, but it was a big lie. I mean, this embassy is very problematic, a whole liability. The South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, aka the host, was not pleased with the guest. The US Embassy in South Africa issued a warning of a possible terrorist attack in Sandton, a posh suburb of Johannesburg known as the richest square miles in Africa. The alert, which was posted on Wednesday, said that terrorists were planning to target large gatherings of people on October 29. As a result, the UK also issued a similar travel warning. The alert caused panic and fear as it went viral on social media and WhatsApp groups, especially church groups. The US Embassy did all that without prior consulting with the South African government. This naturally sparked anger and resentment from the South African government, which slammed it as unfunded and irresponsible. President Cyril Ramaphosa said on Thursday that the US government should have consulted with South Africa before issuing such an alert, which sent panic amongst the people, adding that only his government should issue such warnings and that the authorities are working to verify and address the threats. Usman Sonko, a leading opposition figure in Senegal, is in a coma in a Dakar hospital after resuming his hunger strike. He has been detained since July on various charges which he claims are part of a political plot by President Macky Sall to exclude him from the 2024 election. Sonko, who came third in the 2019 election, faces accusations of defamation, debauchery of a minor, and terrorism. He was convicted in absentia and removed from the electoral list, but a judge reversed the decision. However, the authorities still deny him the forms to collect the sponsorship for his candidacy. Sonko also faces charges of calling for insurrection and endangering state security. He started a hunger strike in August but stopped it after being hospitalized and advised by religious leaders. He resumed it last week and his condition is critical. His lawyers are pleading with President Macky Sall to end this situation. The European Union has initiated measures to impose sanctions on members of Niger's new authorities. I can already see El Macron lifting his sword and shouting from the top of his lungs, "Un pour tous," and the EU responding, "Tous pour un," just like les Trois Mousquetaires. Anyways, the people of Niger are already suffering from all kinds of sanctions from the regional bloc ECOWAS, which some have referred to those sanctions as illegal. Apparently, the EU wants to punish those who threaten Niger's peace, stability, and security. The sanctions include travel bans, asset freezes, and funding restrictions. The more I think about this situation, the more I think this is actually a blessing in disguise. Imagine leading a country in fear of the EU, the US, and other alphabet boys' sanctions just because you choose to do things differently. How can your country be independent when it has so many strings attached? At any point you can be told to jump and how high you should jump, otherwise you will be punished like a child unless you submit to your masters. How did we end up here as African countries? Anyways, the EU says military coup have consequences. Well, unless it is backed by an EU member, then there is nothing to worry about. However though, if Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso pull this off, then the world will be a strange place for those African leaders who continue to beg. This week, the US followed the EU example and cut off all its non-humanitarian aid to the oil-rich Gabon after the coup that ousted Ali Bongo, saying that the coup violated the democratic order and the rule of law. And in a statement, the US State Department spokesman said, and I quote, "We will resume our assistance at the same time as concrete actions are taken by the transition government to establish a democratic regime." End quote. This is becoming more and more theatrical and the masks are falling off. Is this really about democracy or interest? When we all know that the elections that gave Ali Bongo another term in office was rigged and everyone knows it. And that's why his cousin booted him out of power. Yet the US did not intervene then. Why now? Is it because France has a stronger grip on Gabon? Speaking of France, it's very quiet on this coup compared to the Niger coup where it behaved like a crazy ex and was kicked out of Niger. But guess who stayed in Niger? Yes, the US. After all, the US stabbed the French in the back in this Niger saga to secure its interests. Listen, this foreign aid will be the end of us Africans if we are not careful. This move is not America trying to send a strong message that democracy is non-negotiable. This move is America trying to assert its influence and interest in a region where it faces competition from other powers. If it's your first time interacting with my content, I would like to welcome you and let you know that I have a podcast on YouTube full of non-political stories. You can find it in the podcast sections of the channel. I also have a book of Proverbs which you can access through the link below. Moreover, I create fire content that speaks for itself. Please check out my catalog and thank you for your time.
We, ni nini?